From Sugar 23, I'm Angela Ledgerwood, and this is Lit Up. This week on Lit Up, I'm speaking with my great friend, Maeve Higgins, a comedian, writer, podcaster, actor, New York Times contributor, and the author of the new book, Tell Everyone on This Train I Love Them. Though Maeve is known for her comedic voice, her work has definitely more and more been underpinned by all the things she's been learning about the greater world and how people move around it. Maeve is one of my oldest friends in New York and one of the only people who gets the weirdest parts of my sense of humor. As you'll hear, we can be a little cruel to each other, but it's only because it's underpinned by a great affection. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoy making fun of Maeve Higgins. Sometimes I forget that there are baddies because we surround ourselves with our friends and people like us, and we forget.
Yeah, I mean, I keep you around to remind me.
Of the
Not
conniving types.
Yeah, I think there she is. She looks just like one of us. She's out to get me.
Always. I was trying to remember when we first met.
It would have been fittingly at a book club, and I think it would have been 7 or 8 years ago. You know, we were 20. I think it was probably then. I was trying to remember like when I moved to the States, and that was my first bunch of friends, was you and the girls from the book club.
And many of us were Aussies in that book club, and it's now not been disbanded, but because of the pandemic, so many of our members have moved all over the world.
Yeah. And I feel like we've stayed friends, but the book club element has faded. And what we do now is we listen to your podcast and we, you know, privately trash books or enjoy books.
Oh, you mean we privately trash you and the conversations you have?
It's so funny to me that I did fall in with this bunch of Australian book lovers because, you know, Australians are not known for their intellect.
Moving on.
So I remember teaching you different words and showing you which way to hold the book. And yeah, it really meant a lot to me that time. And look at you now, reading nonstop, pretending to read. And
I'm sweating in my sweater because I don't know what to say. I'd never know a retort. The best way to communicate with Maeve is on text because it gives me, who takes some time to come up with a witty response. I'm like, oh, I'm on the subway. It's not coming through.
yeah.
And I have time to come up with a few emojis that make sense. But your quick mind.
Your text messages are so funny and brutal. And like, even I would just say this to the listener, she's not good to me. Angela's not good to me. I was coming here for the interview and it's like, I think the first one I've done about the book, and Angela said, you know, do you want a little tea, you know, or coffee, or do you be comfortable? And I said, oh yeah, I'll get whatever you're getting, like, thank you. And you said, yeah, I'll put a few drops of THC in there, knowing that the first essay in my book is about the time that I accidentally got incredibly high by ingesting THC.
That's right.
So that's the kind of thing you do. Sneak attacks, references to past failures, like little humiliations here and there where you don't even know you've been stabbed and then you look down and you're bleeding.
I undercut you every chance I have.
You do.
But I remembered when this happened to you. Tell us about being accidentally drugged by a very generous friend who only wanted the best for you.
Yeah, I mean, there was nothing, that's the thing. It wasn't anything to do with the person. It gave me some candy that had been given to her. I said, oh, great, like I love chocolate. And then later that day, of course, I ate the entire box of chocolate for my lunch, you know, because that's a good choice and that's what you do when you're busy. And then I went out to run errands and unbeknownst to like pretty much everybody involved, there was like high doses of THC, of like, it was weed candy. And so I think I ate like 80 milligrams of it, and the recommended dose is 5 milligrams for like a regular user. I had never done that before. So I ate so much that it had a psychedelic effect. It was like I had taken... Effect. Well, I wouldn't say
that's from reading your essay, it felt like you were teetering on a break with reality.
Yeah, certainly was. The railings around me were moving and the floor was moving, and yeah, I wasn't really in my body. I couldn't speak or anything. It was sort of an extraordinary experience, and it was one that really frightened me. So I made it into kind of a funny story, but actually it was really frightening.
Well, I think that touches upon so much of your comedy too. It's often, or for many of us, it's the worst things that happen to us, or the terrifying things that, with a little bit of distance, or it's a way for us to kind of take this horrible thing that's happened and make sense of it, but also have a way to share it. And the best way to have people like forced to listen to you or want to is by making something funny. If you're in New York, you'll know this store. They're called Paper Source, which is very kind of fancy stationary card shop with paper everywhere. And that's where you had this total breakdown, and your friend Emmy came to get you.
Yes, because I was in Paper Source, and it was like around Easter time, because they just sell all just the cutest stuff, don't they, in there? Like, yes, paper, card, decorations, but also just like stuff that you would never need. So I remember I was looking at like little mechanical chicks that you walk them across your desk or something. And I was just like, oh, and they lit up. And I remember thinking like, it'd be so funny to put one in my mouth and then like put that on Instagram. And then I started thinking, oh, the woman knows, like the woman in Paper Source, like the woman working there, like she knows that I'm going to do that, and she's so mad at me. And then I was like trying to put it down, but my arms are way too long, or they felt my arms did not physically change, but I felt like they were like unrolling like right across the store. And all of this was happening when I didn't realize that I was getting really high. I just thought it was happening because, well, what I put it together as is that I was having a nervous breakdown. And I thought, it's finally happened. I was like, oh yeah, that's it. It's, I had a feeling this was going to happen. And my mom always thought this was going to happen. And like, it's happening in Paper Source in Park Slope.
That's the terrifying thing. And I think if you're someone that's dealt with mental illness, or there's that history in your family, I mean, I definitely identified to reading this and going, it might happen one day, maybe today's the day. Or if you've witnessed someone actually have a break with reality and know that that could happen to you too, it's terrifying. And how does that connect too with you being a creative person and having been a creative person for so long? And I want to hear about your childhood and how that connects, but also having a history of mental illness in the family.
Yeah, definitely. Because I thought it was maybe just my family, but like the more people that I meet that are also, writers or performers, I think it's quite a commonly held belief the same types of brains are likely to break, that are the same types of brains that are likely to like form new connections and be creative, basically. So I don't know. There was like a study before that was like, oh, psychopaths and comedians have a lot in common. I don't know. But I don't mean psychopaths. I mean the fragility that comes with having a brain that's like, but then is it, Angela, like, isn't it everybody's brain is fragile? Like, and everybody's mental health is fragile. Like, I don't know that it's especially creatives or...
I do feel that writers or comedians or people that want to delve into their own psychology and history, to go places and remember things that a lot of other people who are just getting on with things say to themselves, oh, I'm just not going to go there. Whereas I feel like it's the artist who tries to go there, and sometimes that's what can lead to some type of instability.
Yeah, that was definitely what I grew up thinking, because my, immediate parents, and they were not in anything creative or artistic really. And I always got the impression that that was sort of like a danger zone. And the people in my wider family who were writers or who were creative were out there that was like not to be emulated. In the park, like the public park of our family, they were like the scary sculptures. And then the rest of us were like the roundabout and, like the fun, easy to understand. And so I always associated, particularly writing, with kind of a self-indulgence and a sickness. So that's why I think it took me a while to just accept, well, yeah, but it's also like something that you just have to do. So I came to writing through like stand-up and performance, and it took me a while to even say like, I'm a writer.
So then what was it like being one of 7 kids? And where are you in that hierarchy, but also when...
The best one.
Yeah, of course. Well, we know you're definitely your mother's favorite. But what were the dynamics within the pack of you? Because the opening essay, I think it's maybe the first or second one, was the one that just floored me and had me in tears. And it's very much about, if you have this incredible group of siblings, why do you need friends? You're such a precious friend to me, and you're such a good friend.
Oh, Angela.
It's the truth. But reading about being within such a beautiful, warm family, I can understand how precious that was and how it kind of buffers you from the world.
I think it does. And I meet fewer and fewer people who have these big families. I think in the 1980s in Ireland, it was quite common to be, one of 5, or like I was like one of 7, and eventually 8, because we got a new sister when I was older. I think that it does give you a feeling that like you're not really an individual, because also we were all so close in age, and it's 6 girls and we all look exactly the same, and we have the same voices. We all went to the same school, and it was a small school, so we were all in the same room in the school, and then like we all shared the bedroom at home. It was just a pack is a good word for us, actually. So you kind of feel like, well, I'm all set. Like I don't need anybody else, because I have this gang around me, and we're very supportive of one another and very interested in each other's lives. And I remember once, like my sister showing me a series of messages from me to her about what color nail polish she should be wearing. I guess I just felt like I knew better than her about this one thing. And she showed it to me because I denied that. I said, no, I would never speak to you like that. And she was like, no, you think you're my, boss and mother. But anyway, so it's a lot. And it's also like, think about trying to keep up with your friends, right? Where's Angela working? Who's she dating? How's she feeling about this? What does she think about this? Like new TV series. Like there's like so much to know about your friends, and you're living here, and it's really hard to even arrange to meet up, let alone to like properly dig in. And then with your family, when there's like 8 people that you literally are like, I'm surprised. She never used to like kimchi. What's going on with her? Like the most tiny, intimate changes. Like you've got this huge encyclopedia that you have to keep updating. So it's also like a time thing that I felt like I have all of these people whose lives I'm very involved in. Like, do I even have time for friends, relationships outside of this family? And I think the things that I realized are that my friends don't know the same stories about life as my family does. Like we all have the kind of same outlook, and we put the same narrative on events, and we kind of, well, this means that and that means that. And then I get to meet all these new people who have a whole different backstory and who see things completely differently. And then I get to trust them. And I would say like my female friendships have been like a revelation to me in my 30s. And also like as, an immigrant to the US where you don't know anybody, then you're forced to reach out and to kind of like seek out these friendships as well.
I mean, your book is so much too about the immigrant experience coming to a new place. There's an opportunity to collide with the types of people you wouldn't at home because you're in those kind of grooves of social lives that you've grown up with.
Completely.
But you come from comedy, but you've also pushed further to, I think, underpin your comedy with the facts about particularly America and immigration and things, so you can have a really nuanced point of view. And you recently got a master's in international migration studies.
Yeah, I did.
So I want to connect the dots between being that kid in a house, in a boisterous house, and kind of finding that voice. And then if there was a turning point of going, being funny is great, but I need to push myself more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the funny part, I think, was, hereditary. It's the way we all talk to each other in my family. It's quite competitive, jokey family. And I still maintain that two of my sisters they're just so naturally funny, and like it's just not important to them to like be on a stage and like prove it to strangers again and again. They're just healthier in that way. But they're so witty and
Do you steal their jokes?
Oh, all of the time. Like, and the way they look at things. And I'm very extractive with those two girls. Probably three of them actually. But I think that I still do think it's really important to be funny. And I still think it's a really effective way to communicate, like, and to tell stories. And like you were saying, to kind of say something that happened to you that was scary, but also in a way that like isn't going to scare people, But I think the older I get, and having moved here, and the realization that like other people's lives are so different to mine, and there's so many different worlds within this world, particularly here in New York City, where 1 in 3 of us are immigrants as well. But I do think that we're living through, like, isn't it? We are living in a very historic time. And sometimes I think, oh no, that's just like the human need to feel important. But then other times I'm like, no, what's happening in this moment is like extraordinary, And so to face that and to try and understand that, which is, I think, such a worthwhile goal, to try and, what Hannah Arendt says, which is like stop and think what we are doing, is so difficult. It's more important to me than comedy or storytelling or any, So any way I can find to do that, I'll try and do that. Whether it's, going to college, or whether it's like interviewing immigrants, or whether it's like listening at comedy clubs to what like young comics are talking about. Any way that I can try and understand better just what is happening, I'll do it.
While the pandemic when it had just started, I remember knowing that you were about to go to Texas, to San Antonio, for a very particular conference. What was that conference? And I'm wondering how you metabolized what you saw there, how you did that in the isolation of a pandemic, and if 2 years out, there's a changed perspective.
I can't believe that was like 2 years ago, because it was that crazy time in early March 2020 when we were all hearing a bit, and some things were getting cancelled. And this border security expo run by the Department of Homeland Security was just still going ahead. And I was thinking like, surely they're going to cancel. But they didn't. So I went down there, I think it was like the second week of March. And it's basically a government and industry event, which already is like alarm bells. So it's all of the businesses connected with border security. So there's, drone companies, anti-drone companies, wall manufacturers, like huge samples of different walls and different finishes. Like, oh, someone will definitely slip down from here, or they'll get impaled up there. And a lot of arms, obviously, and dog kennels. And then in the conference center, you're just listening to different panels talking about keeping immigrants out. I'm absolutely like simplifying what it was. It was a 3-day event, But that was fundamentally it, Border Security Expo. And so you had people from Customs and Border Patrol and ICE just like discussing their work. And one big thing that really struck me was they have a really hard time recruiting people. The Customs and Border Patrol do. And I remember they were saying like, oh, I wish we could like go to colleges, but like the kids protest and oh, you can't be dealing with that. And they were like scared of university students like protesting them, which is crazy because they're like a $20 billion industry of armed men. It's really largely a male federal agency. And I just remember being like, that's so funny. Like you're scared of like a few students holding placards. And certainly there was a couple of people protesting outside the convention center. And like, you know, I was there reporting on it, but I still felt kind of like a traitor. So I kind of came out and I was kind of like smiling at the protesters like, hey, I'm with you, you know, but I wasn't with them. I was just an observer. So at the same time that I was at that conference, where, by the way, nobody was distancing or masking or anything, they were like sharing food and slapping each other on the back, and it was all very macho, and there was like a couple of references to the coronavirus. Bear in mind, this is the Department of Homeland Security, and they were like fixating on like what to do about like kids on the border instead of actually worrying about this virus that was coming to like do what it did, right? Kill 800,000 Americans and shut down the economy, and it's not even over yet. We don't even know. And so I was like, okay, this government doesn't know what it's doing. Like, this is so scary to me to see the way they're behaving here in Texas, while I also know that other, you know, their colleagues in New York are like terrified and wearing hazmat suits. This makes no sense to me. So I covered the conference, and then within 2 days, I had flown back to Ireland. Despite like living here and being devoted to New York, I was like, goodbye. I don't know what the US government's going to do here, but I don't think it's going to be appropriate.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What a time. I mean, I was also surprised in the book to read that, I mean, it's such a complicated issue, border security, but that I think you said that, I'll get this right.
Can you do my accent too?
Oh
if you're
my
going to
gosh,
be reading
no,
from
I cannot. A surprising fact in the book that you cite is that I think the border industry gave 2 times more to the Biden campaign than it had to the Trump campaign.
The fact is, like, since 2001, every, Democratic or Republican, everyone has given more and more billions of dollars to detention and deportation. And famously, Obama deported more people than the previous 2 Republican presidents put together. I don't think it's like a Republican problem, honestly. I think it's an American problem, this rejection and this cruelty towards immigrants. I think just a lot of people started paying attention when Trump was in office because he did such loud, horrifying things. But I think that we don't fully grasp like how brutal the regime against migrants is and has been. I mean, it wasn't always as bad on the southern border as like the time that I've spent there, because there used to just be kind of circular migration, right? Like people would come from Mexico and maybe from further down in South America and work in the US and kind of just go back and forth. It was seasonal work and it wasn't perfect, but it was certainly better than now where you kind of get trapped. Like, it is kind of like insane that there's 11 million undocumented people in the US. That's so many. And it's like so many families who have this fear. And it's really not fair, because I was undocumented. When I first came here, I was a teenager. I lived here for a year and worked as a nanny when I was 17.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Maeve. And you came in knowing that you were going to outstay the
My
3
visa,
months. Yeah.
Which is how most people become undocumented. You know, there's this kind of idea that like people sneak across the border. No, most of us fly in and then we just stay. And loads of us are white and loads of us are European. But of course, we don't come into the same level of police contact or immigration control contact because we're white. So it's just a whole other experience than a brown or a black person. So now when I think about it, I just feel really suspicious. I'm like, okay, what good does it do to America to have like 11 million undocumented people? There's been so many times legislation was like almost passed, but it never quite got there. And like the part of me that thinks the worst is, well, it's really useful to have all these millions of undocumented people because they will work whatever you tell them to work. And they will be this workforce that like you can point to other workers and say, okay, well, if you don't do it, they're going to do it.
And it enables almost an underclass
Right.
of people who don't have the rights to unionize or to call out their bosses or any of these things.
Right. It's just that the fact remains that, you know, America is a country that does that. It's really one of the only like big countries in the West that I can think of that like has this huge group of people that they're kind of happy to just let them, you know, live without rights.
Yeah, I don't have an answer.
There isn't an answer really. And I think that was the cool part of it. And of course, I'm lucky because I get to intellectualize this stuff. I don't have to live through it or see my dad living through it or, you know, experience it. I'm very lucky in that way. But I think I at least get to answer, you know, to ask these questions and to get like some kind of answers or like look to history or like look to lived experiences to try and like get some more understanding of it. Because like so many of us, I just kind of like understand America to be one thing. And to me, it's played out that way. It's been a land of opportunity. It just has. Like I got to come here and live here and have this amazing career that I could not have anywhere else. I got to make these incredible friends that were all drawn to New York for the same reasons I was. And so for me, America has been wonderful. And then in other, you know, I have to ask, well, like if I'm living here and paying tax here and buying into this, like I need to be responsible. I need to understand like what it is that I'm doing and where I'm living. So that's kind of what a lot of my writing is about. And it does sound pretty serious and sad, and your little face is quite sad. But it's a privilege, right? Like that we get to even wrestle with this stuff.
And the fact that there was an opportunity for me, I won the green card lottery to come here without any friction at all. But not even that. Once you're here, there's no barriers to entry to anything. I was so fortunate. And, you know, we also have a story of like working hard and, you know, sure, to a point. Yeah. But being white and assimilating to the dominant culture so easily or not is obviously a huge part of being able to tap into the American dream so easily.
Yeah. It certainly is, yeah. And to, you know, I do think that like you don't have to be a writer or anything to just want to know more and to want to like understand something past your own experience. But I do feel like the older I get and like the harder life kind of gets, the more I'm allowed to understand it, and like the more I'm capable of asking better questions and, you know, knowing where to look for answers. And just, I think it's going to be good to be old, honestly. Like, can you imagine how much like knowledge and understanding we'll have accumulated if we keep going this way?
Yes. And I think to that point, though, we have to look to our elders and want to hear from them far more. Because there's so much knowledge, right? Like I was just thinking, I was like, oh, Mum could come and live with us here. I kind of like the idea of multi-generational household all of a sudden. They do have so much to share with us. But as, you know, as people who've left home, we disconnect ourselves from that family structure that gives us access to far like elderly people.
I mean, I do this comedy show every Monday, and Joe Firestone, my co-host, so it's me, Joe, and Aparna and Anshirla. And Joe started to do a comedy class with Jewish senior citizens.
That's right.
And this was actually just like pre-pandemic, and she would just like go to their, I guess, like a senior citizen center. And then the pandemic hit, so she started doing it online, and they've been doing it now for 2 years. And some of them are like elderly, like 90 years old. And you know, it became a special on Peacock, and you can actually watch this special now if you wanted. But like, to hear the old people doing stand-up comedy, to hear their perspective, like, and it's not like, oh, they're so wise. It's just a different perspective, and it's more knowledge about things I don't know about. Hearing them was just such a blast. Like, I sat in her class and I did a workshop, and they've come and performed in our show and stuff. And it's just been the coolest thing ever.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, wait, I want to kind of segue, and I want to hear more, because I didn't know this about you, that you had this period where you found live theatre and watching movies and things preposterous and almost like actually hysterical, like the true sense of hysteria, of of being in a place where people are acting out, and you just found it preposterous. What happened, and how did you cure yourself?
I think maybe I had like reached a saturation point or something, because I started to do stand-up comedy when I was like 24, and then probably at around like 34 or 35 or something, I was living here, and I started to not really be able to go to shows. And first I just thought it was like, oh, I've overdone it. Like, I remember like a woman I know who I really love and respect her work, another friend said, oh, let's go and see her show. And I was like, I don't think I can. Like, I'm afraid I'll start laughing. And it felt like insane to me that people pay money to go and sit quietly, like in silence, maybe with some laughs or whatever, but like, and watch someone else pretend to have emotions on stage. And it's not like, oh, it was a bad play, or like I was like laughing at their acting. I just found it so silly that I started giggling, and I thought, oh my God, like, if that poor actress hears me, and she was like weeping or acting or pretending, whatever, to weep, and
Right.
and I couldn't stop laughing, and it was bad, and so I just stopped. I said, I can't handle performance, even like watching acting on TV or in movies. I was like, there's a cameraman right there. Like, this is so inauthentic. Like, I don't know what I was. But since then, and I'm so lucky that this happened, 2 of my friends like wrote a movie for me to be the lead in the movie. And, you know, it was like a proper comedy horror feature film. And so, of course, I said, yes, like, I'd love to do that. It's very hard to get that kind of opportunity. And I think by doing that movie and seeing like how, first of all, like how hard it is to make a movie, how many different people are involved, how collaborative it is, like how like all these different people have to be talented in all these different ways to make this incredibly silly and lovable like end film, that I think what it was, Angela, like, I didn't respect it. I didn't respect what people were doing. And then I started to like respect it, to like understand and respect it more. But yeah, I certainly didn't advertise the fact that like I couldn't handle watching my profession, like, you know, acting, performance. I felt so deeply mortified for all of us.
I wonder if there's something in our like 30s or some moment that happens. I feel like I got disillusioned with everything for a period. Like, I didn't want to read anything. I thought like maybe it's when the realities of life dawn on you and you have that kind of petulant teenager moment of like discovering like how dark the world really is. You know, those moments as a teenager when you're confused by the world, but also arrogant, thinking you know so much.
Yeah.
But as a grown-up, you also realize that the joy of life is having to let go and let the beauty take over, let your imagination go, so you can deal with the realities of life, or even just the knowledge of what human beings do to each other. And like imagination is part of how we cope. I don't know. I just feel like went through a very serious few years where I didn't have a very good sense of humor.
Yeah.
And I don't think you were very funny during that period either. I'm kidding. No, but I wonder if that resonates at all.
It does. It really does. And like, it's that, you know, it's unbearable to be around people like that, you know, because everybody's life is difficult to some degree, but like to that person, it feels very difficult. Like, so to kind of say like, I'm taking it more seriously than you are, and like I deserve a prize for that, is so ludicrous to me. And I would say like having coming out the other end of it, now I'm so impressed by like someone who can create a good distraction. I love them.
Oh my gosh.
We've talked too much.
The woman knows how to talk. No, I feel like we've barely scratched the surface, but that's okay.
Yeah, I was just delighted to see you.
Me too.
And you know, I'm so excited for you to read this book.
I've read it.
I think you're going to enjoy it
so
when you do.
thoroughly. I don't even think I've mentioned the title of your book, Maeve. So I'm going to ask you one last question. The title of your book is Tell Everyone on This Train I Love Them, which when I saw the cover and it's something that you would think and feel because I know you so much. And I thought, oh, I think Maeve feels that on the train all the time because that's the type of person she is. But you reveal in the book that the title has a bit much deeper layer to that. And I'm hoping you can tell us about it.
Yeah, I think it is both of those things, because I think that, you know, living in a city where we're all so tightly packed in, and I write about the subway, and I write about the subway in relation to like immigrants. The actual words come from a very tragic thing that happened. But out of that grew this really profound statement, I think, which was, I don't know if you remember, but you've read it, but in 2017, there was a horrible attack on the train in Portland, in Oregon, where there was a kind of a white supremacist who was about to attack. He was yelling at and about to attack two young girls on the train. And 3 men stepped in to, you know, try and reason with him and try and calm him down. But he stabbed 3 men, and 2 of them died, actually. 1 survived, thank goodness. But one of the men he killed, he was this 23-year-old. His name is Talishan Mridin Namkai Meche. And one of the witnesses and one of the people who was with him as he died of his wounds reported that his final words were, "Tell everybody on this train that I love them." And this kind of ricocheted around the world when it happened, because I suppose it was this terrible, terrible thing that happened, but there was such an unexpected sentiment that came from it. And I remember reading those words in a few different places and sort of finding them like unbelievable, that like a dying person after this violence would come up with something so profound. And also I feel like that he meant it. Like if you're ever going to mean something, it would be in that moment. So it just really stuck with me, and with a lot of people too, because when I gave the book this title, a lot of people were like, "Oh my goodness, that's what that young man on the train said." So I also held on to it as kind of a little personal kind of creed to myself in the past few years, to kind of, as a way to just hold on to this feeling of like, we're brothers and sisters, no matter how like awful things get, like we're kind of in this together. And that the kind of division that we've been feeling doesn't kind of overwhelm me, you know. They've been really useful for me as kind of this personal touchstone. And they really fit, you know, they helped to guide me when I was writing this book too. Yeah, it's quite a profound statement that he made. And I just think it bears repeating and remembering.
What lights you up?
Whoa. So I have 3 nieces, 3 different siblings, and they're all 6, and they've just learned to read. I think late because of the pandemic. I feel like I could read when I was younger than that. But they're all very different to one another. They're these little girls, and they are so interesting and full of, they giggle a lot. Like, it's true that little girls giggle so much, and that is like so cute to me. And they also all have very strange like tooth formations, because I guess like their teeth are at different stages of like falling out and growing in, and they all have these burning pink chubby cheeks, and they are so cute, and they ask me the strangest things. And definitely getting to spend time with them is, it's probably like my favorite thing in the world. Yeah.
It's the best answer there is.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening to this conversation with Maeve Higgins. Maeve, now we can go and eat the box of chocolates I got for us. Enjoy! Lit Up is a podcast from Sugar 23. It's hosted by me, Angela Ledgewood, and is produced by Liam Billingham. Mike Mayer and Michael Sugar are the executive producers. The theme music is by Andrei Radovsky. See you next time.